You are listening to the Lawyer Stories podcast with host Benny Gold. Lawyer Stories was founded in July 2017 on Instagram and is an expanding global network of lawyers and law students sharing their personal journeys to the noble profession of the practice of law. Join us on this podcast as we dig deeper into these stories and hear from lawyers and law students from around the world in all areas of the legal profession. Here at Lawyer Stories, we believe that every lawyer has a story. What's yours?
Welcome to the Lawyer Stories podcast with Benny Gold, episode 24. Today we welcome attorney and now best-selling Amazon author, Jason Lazarus. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for joining us. So we did feature you on Lawyer Stories October 12th. So one thing I wanted to, we're Lawyer Stories, so we like to start with, the why a little bit, like why you became a lawyer. But like one thing that sort of piqued my interest, because I was a legal studies major at UMass Amherst. You said you weren't really sure, but you were a psychology major, but then you took like a legal studies course your last year. And so do you remember that class, or like what really changed for you when you took that course?
Yeah, actually it's funny because I'm here in my home office and I actually have some of my books from those classes I took that I've kept. And yeah, I mean, my recollection of it was just that initial introduction to the law and kind of broad-based, concepts. And I thought, this is just really, it just interested me, the idea of how the law serves everybody, and the legal justice system and its application. It just was something that I had really never thought too much about. Neither of my parents even went to college, so it was not something that was talked about in my household. My parents were entrepreneurs and had a family business, but obviously they always encouraged me to go to college, but really never even thought about going to law school until I started, trying to determine what I wanted to do after I graduated. And, with a psychology undergraduate degree, you really have to go on. So the question was, do I go on to graduate school or do I do something different? And thankfully, I decided to do something different because I think that I definitely found the right path ultimately.
Right. So you said you had a family business. What kind of business were your folks in?
They owned a printing business. So
okay.
they moved here in 1980 and knew nothing about printing and just decided to open a printing franchise and did very well with it.
Where did they move from? 80s?
New York.
New York.
Well,
okay.
Actually, New Jersey. My parents were born and raised in New York. I was born in Brooklyn, where they were from, and then we moved to Jersey when I was 3 years old. So
okay, and now you're Floridian. So you
I've been here since I was 10. So basically,
that's great though. I mean, hey, I'm in Massachusetts. We have an upcoming winter, and it feels like football season, but like winter's coming. So we don't have winter. Yeah, that's right.
We don't know what that is.
I know. Well, the fall's very nice here in central Massachusetts. But so anyway, you did actually inherit or take on some of that entrepreneurial spirit, which we'll touch upon in a little while. But you also mentioned one other thing, and then we'll go on. You said you had a mentor, and I think personally, like, mentors are important. Some people don't need them. Some people are self-starters. They don't want to listen to anybody else. But like, who, do you remember much about the mentor that you had that sort of said, go to law school, like do that, or what kind of advice you got?
Yeah, he was in administration at my undergraduate institution. It was actually had been in my fraternity, so he was very involved with my fraternity.
What fraternity was that?
Lambda Chi.
Okay, all right.
And he was truly a great man, and I really thank God that ultimately he gave me the advice he gave me and really recognized the potential I had and what I could do with this kind of career path. Because when you're that age, you really just do not have a clue.
No.
It's really, it's dumb luck ultimately if you do find, I think, the right thing. I mean, I guess some people are really truly called upon in certain things, but I definitely, I was a very competitive cyclist and athlete growing up, and I never really thought too much about education in my career. I was always focused on athletics, and
Right.
so having someone that gave me that direction, and throughout business, I've had some really great mentors too, and without that, you certainly are at a disadvantage. Having people that have been there and done that and seen it and can guide you and advise you so that you become a better leader and business owner. And there's just, for me, it's been invaluable.
And that was at the undergraduate level?
Yeah.
You were at Florida State?
No, Central Florida undergrad, Florida State for law school.
Okay, Florida State Law School. I thought I saw Stetson somewhere over there.
I got an LLM degree from Stetson. So
very good. So out of law school, you did some insurance defense, and then you switched to working with injury clients during their settlement. So that's sort of where the peak of like your story sort of turns a little bit, I think, because that's sort of what you really focus on and really have thrived on. So tell me about going from insurance defense to making that switch, that pivot.
Yeah, I mean, when I was litigating, I think I was pretty good at it. The lawyers I worked with told me I was good at it, but ultimately it wasn't my passion. I felt like I was sort of just a cog in the wheel. And I mean, I didn't feel like I was actually helping anyone. And, ultimately I just didn't feel like I was getting fulfillment out of it, and just didn't see that being a career that I would enjoy for the rest of my life. And I wanted to make a difference ultimately. And so, when I decided to get out of that, I had the opportunity to get into working with injury victims as part of a team to help do the planning when they settle their cases. And, from there sort of developed this incredible niche, which, I'm certainly one of the few people in the country that, have the background and expertise in a lot of different areas that impact these settlements. And so, it was just something for me that evolved out of this desire ultimately to do good, to be part of the solution and part of the team that helps an injury victim go from, what's a very dark period to hopefully better days after that.
So how did you figure out that that's what you wanted to do? I think I read that you were in an accident, or was it a personal experience, or you wanted to just help injury victims? Because it is really a niche type of thing. I mean, I talked to catastrophic injury attorneys, I talked to personal injury lawyers, but this is sort of meeting the client at a certain part of the process, I feel like.
Yeah, I was involved in an accident, but this was, was well into my career as doing what I do today. So, for me, it was really all about just this opportunity to use my background as a lawyer, but in a different way, and to help people through this process that they go through when they're settling their cases. I mean, it's kind of morphed and changed. When I first got into it, really it was more about the financial plan aspect of it. But what I quickly realized was there were so many legal issues that these clients face, particularly in the government benefit preservation area, that I could help them by being a resource in not just one singular area, but across multidisciplines that impact people when they're settling their cases, which is why ultimately I went back and got that LLM, because it's an elder law, which is really disability law. It's, you know, all really the same issues that the elderly and the disabled face. So, you know, having that educational background and the opportunity to use that and help people in their time of need when they're trying to determine how to structure the rest of their lives after becoming disabled. You know, I mean, the people that typically I work with are people that, you know, they've just retired basically, you know, unwillingly, because they've been so significantly injured as a result
Wow.
of someone's negligence.
Wow. So you founded, is that, you worked for a little while and then you founded Synergy Settlements?
Yeah, I was.
And then
Yeah,
you sort
sorry.
of, that was like the entrepreneurial spirit of your parents we touched on earlier. Like you're an entrepreneur now. So like how'd that all evolve?
Yeah, I mean, it really was, you know, it took some time. You know, it was about 10 years into doing what I'm doing, that I kind of saw that things were really changing. And so I was working for a friend who had actually got me into the planning side of the business, and saw this potential for what I was talking about, which was, you know, I developed this expertise and could help injury victims across multi disciplines, but there really wasn't a company that could work with law firms and with injury victims in that multidisciplinary fashion at the time. And so I brought that idea to the folks I was working with, and they were really focused on building their company in a different manner, and it wasn't consistent with their long-term plan. So I decided, you know what, it's just time for me to do my own thing. And ultimately, I had felt constrained because I had a lot of ideas about the way the industry could be changed and could be formulated in a different way to deliver a more holistic solution for law firms and for the injury victims. And so I set out to start building that. And it took a while. You know, it certainly was an undertaking, but you know, I don't regret that decision at all. I mean, it's been a fun journey, and it's a journey that continues today, building that company that started out, you know, in 2008, very small, with 4 people, that now employs, you know, over 60 people and
Wow.
over 15 attorneys, and, you
Amazing.
know, does business in all 50 states. So,
Wow. Congratulations. That's quite a feat. That's amazing.
but, you know, I mean, what's really important, and every time we bring on a new person, I personally kind of go through our mission and the importance of those people that we serve, because I don't ever want anyone to lose sight of the fact that, you know, the people that we're working with have typically been, you know, catastrophically injured, and the importance of what we do and how we do it. And, you know, the fact that, you know, our mission is incredibly important. As long as I'm around, no one's going to ever forget that, because, you know, especially after having experienced it myself, you know, that experience taught me a lot. You know, it's really something you don't quite understand until you actually experience it yourself. You know, you can be sitting there with families and see the pain in their faces, but you know, until you've actually experienced it yourself and went through it and seen your family's faces when they see you after having been in an accident, and you know, their fear that they might lose you, and those things, you know, it's just it really is a privilege that we have to help people in a time that is really a difficult time for people that we're interacting with.
So where do you, like, when does the case get referred? I'm curious. Like, and when do you pick up the case, and like how do you sort of start it? And then I'm curious, like, what kind of a boss you are. I know that's like wrapped up, but like the first part you can answer first, and like I'm curious where the case begins with you.
It varies. You know, sometimes we're involved very early on, depending on the complexities of the case and what the lawyer might need assistance with. You know, a lot of times it's closer to resolution. For a lot of my career, I've spent a lot of time sitting in mediations, working directly with families. I do that less so today, just with a lot of other demands on my time. But still, I mean, I do a lot of client consultations about preserving government benefits and making sure ultimately that their plan is going to protect them for the rest of their lives. But it does vary too by what we're doing. So when we're resolving healthcare liens, for example, that's something typically we're getting that request closer to the time of resolution. If it's the planning aspect of the case, that may be more earlier on, because part of what we'll do is we'll do an analysis of the life care plan and the government benefits and all the different things that need to be done to make sure ultimately when that case settles that client is protected and has a plan that is going to stand the test of time. I mean, you could have a minor child who's got a brain injury and is going to live 50, 60, 70 more years, and we've got to create something that is going to keep them protected for all of that time and make sure that they have access to the government assistance they might need and those sorts of things. So it really does depend upon what we're doing. In terms of what kind of boss I am, that's an interesting question. You'd have to ask the people that I work with. I really don't see myself as a boss. I see myself as a member of a pretty incredible team.
Yeah.
We really have some highly talented and skilled lawyers and professionals, nurses. I mean, it is a pretty amazing aggregation of talent that we have that we can bring to bear and help that injury victim and help that trial lawyer too. So, it's an honor for me to work with the kind of people that we have, and it makes it fun. It makes it, so when you go to work, you feel like you're surrounded by people that are smarter than you, which is really always the goal. I mean, I never want to be the smartest person in the room. That's the wrong room to be in.
Well, I heard, yeah, I mean, and I also heard, like, if you should hire people that are like, I don't want to say smarter than you, but like, that's what I sort of heard. Like, you should hire like really, bright people to like help you out and like do work. Right. So like, I don't know your staff. I'm not implying that, anything, but I think that's good. That's a good answer. So
no, we have some really highly intelligent and skilled people that have come from a lot of different walks of life and bring that talent and skill set to our team. And probably the most important thing that we have is our team. I mean, the things that we're able to do and achieve for our clients is a testament to that team and their abilities. And ultimately, really that's the cornerstone of any great company is a great team. Without that, there's really no value in that company. And when I talk about our mission, one of the things I really harp on is the fact that we're not there to just help the injury victims. We're there to help each other and make each other better and grow in our own skills and abilities. And the team itself is what is the most important thing to get us to the ultimate goal, which is serving even more families. We track our progress not by revenues but by families that we serve, because again, it get back to the importance of the mission. Because if you focus on that, the revenue side of it is going to follow. It just will. Really, what's more important is making sure people understand the importance of their work and how they positively impact people and their lives on a day in, day out basis.
That's great. So you wrote a book. You recently released a book. Congratulations. And like I said at the beginning of the show, Amazon top seller, or it's great. It's The Art of Settlement. So what made you want to do that? Like, why did you go and write a book?
Yeah, as a lawyer, I'm a member of AAJ and different trial organizations, and every day I see on the listservs, where lawyers are asking questions, interacting. There's just so many questions that are asked about liens, about Medicare, about Medicaid, about trust, about planning for their clients. And I wanted to create a resource and a guide for lawyers that would help them understand the issues so that when they do face those issues, they have a sense of what needs to be done. Do they need to bring in experts? Do they need to do this? Do they need that? The idea behind this is really so that lawyers can issue spot. They know, okay, yeah, I've got Medicare involved. I've got to deal with conditional payments. I might have to deal with a Medicare Advantage lien. I got to deal with the Medicare Secondary Payer Act. Having the ability to issue spot is incredibly important because, for trial lawyers, these areas are complex and they really are fertile for malpractice claims. So, for the lawyer, having the ability to issue spot is really critical. Not being the expert, because frankly, I wrote a almost 200-page book on this topic, and really it was more high level. You could write, and there are entire treatises just about the Medicare Secondary Payer Act, or about special needs planning for people that are on Medicaid and SSI, liens. This is really more of kind of a conglomeration of all these issues, and giving that lawyer the basic information about how to deal with those things. So, expecting a trial lawyer to be able to effectively represent their client and be a zealot advocate, and then also be an expert when that case settles in all these different aspects, it's just impossible. That's why you have lawyers that do guardianship law, that do probate and estate, that do trust, right? Because a trial lawyer in theory could do all of those things, but in practice as a lawyer, you have areas of specialization, and you have skill sets, right? As a trial lawyer, their skill set is being, incredible zealot and advocate for their client and getting the best possible recovery for that client based upon the injuries that they've suffered and the damages. That's their focus, and really that should be their focus. All these ideas about what happens after the case are really issues that's my expertise. That's where, when they have those issues, they've got a resource that can guide them, and the book is a written guide to help them through those issues.
That's amazing. So how have you marketed it? Have you gotten it out? It sounds like it's doing pretty well. I mean, I looked it up. That's great. The Art of Settlement. That's really, it's pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, it's done great. And, one thing we have done is we've sort of released some of the excerpts of the book that highlight different areas. So, one of the things that I've always believed, and we really, that's the only way we market, is thought leadership. We give away a lot of education information to trial lawyers to help them.
Yep.
Because, once they've identified, hey, this is a group that knows their stuff, when they do have an issue that they just can't handle or the team can't handle, then they know who to come to, right? And that's, we spend a lot of time every month doing webinars and blog posts that deal with a lot of the issues that I write about in my book, and even more kind of, nuanced type of topics, because we want to educate lawyers and have them ultimately know, hey, when I have this issue, we know that this company is a resource, and they care about the people that they serve, and they want to help.
And by the way, Lawyer Stories does have a website, and we do have a blog page. So anytime you want to throw something out to me with your photo and a blog post that's previously written, I'll gladly put it up there. Might take me a little time to get up, but for sure. And Lawyer Stories has like a pretty good Florida network of people who do follow and engage So if you see somebody that I could ever connect you with, I'd be happy to do it. So when you're in a room and you're talking to a family or a victim or somebody who's injured, like about a structured settlement, like what do you want them to remember most when you leave? What is it that they should have on the top of their minds?
I mean, really, it's the understanding of that particular option, because the Internal Revenue Code sets up two options for people when they sell their case. One is just take the money as a lump sum and it's not taxable because it's compensation for a physical injury under Section 104 of the Internal Revenue Code. But then they have this other option, which is they can take the settlement in the form of future periodic payments, and it's an investment vehicle, but unlike any other investment, they don't have to pay any tax on it, and there's no ongoing expense associated with it. And actually, when I settled my case, a portion of my recovery I put into a structured settlement, because I knew that that's a great product to utilize for providing yourself with a stream of income, and I felt like it made sense for me, and I think for a lot of people it's something that makes sense because it does offer a tax-free and expense-free way of managing their recovery. It's not that 100% of the settlement should ever go into that, but it's an income tax-free funding vehicle for providing future periodic payments that they can use to offset either lost income or pay for fixed expenses that they know they're going to have into the future. And many states, like my home state, have exemptions from legal process of those types of financial instruments. So, for example, in Florida, that is completely exempt from legal process. Well, that means that you've got as much creditor and judgment protection as possible under the law by utilizing this particular mechanism. So, I want the family to understand that they have this option. It's available to them. How they, then decide to move forward, that's a very personal decision. I always say, hey, look, this is a personal decision. It is your money. It's your recovery. Here are the issues, and I mean, the biggest thing is that most people will dissipate the recovery without doing any planning, just making, poor investment decisions or poor decisions in terms of how they spend the money.
Right.
And so, for most people, they've never had, $100,000, $500,000, $1 million all at once. I mean, it's rare for anybody to have that. So trying to manage that for most people is difficult, much less someone who's also dealing with disabilities and, injuries that they're trying to recover from. It's almost an impossible ask. And so the product itself was designed by Congress, and it was, created to provide a mechanism for injury victims to protect their recovery. And so I just want people to understand that's an option. It's available under the law. It's only available during that small period of time when you're settling the case. You can't decide a year later, I really wanted to do that. It doesn't work that way. So it's just important to them for them to understand all of that.
So you're meeting them at like a pivotal time when they're about to settle their case. It's like they're not going to be able to go back and do it like you said. And so you're the expert at setting that up and like giving the advice about what basically they should do with some sort of settlement. So like, how can an attorney, like, I feel like a lot of attorneys might not know this, like 50% of attorneys might not be like kind of, they personal injury attorneys, but they obviously aren't as specialized as you are in this area. So what are some issues that they could spot to know that like their client needs some additional help with these things?
I mean, I think generally if a client is not financially sophisticated, they've not handled, money on their own before, obviously that's really anybody, whenever they come into a sum of money. If you're dealing with a minor, if you're dealing with someone that's incompetent or significantly disabled. All of those types of situations are situations where, potentially there can be, predators that could get access to the money. I mean, there's a lot of warning signs. If you've got somebody that has substance abuse issues, there's just a multitude of life situations that can arise. And then I think, and this is an important point that I make in the book, is I don't think that the lawyer can really make that call ultimately, because the lawyer has to explain this legal option or have an expert like me explain it, because if you don't, then that client can't make an informed decision. And the model rules require a lawyer to explain matters of the law to the client so that they can make that informed decision. So ultimately, in my mind, and maybe I'm biased and probably am, but I think a lawyer has a responsibility to explain these issues to the client, even if they don't think it's appropriate for the client, because ultimately it's got to be the client's decision what's right for them and what to do. So, certainly there's classes of individuals where, it really makes sense to strongly push, because they're at risk of either blowing the recovery, or, they have elements in their life that dictate it, controlling family members, people that, are not good. You see that with professional athletes. They sometimes surround themselves with a group of people that aren't good. Well, it's not all that different with injury victims. A lot of times it's family members. And I mean, there are some great people, and I mean, I've seen the best in people in these situations, but then you also see the worst. You can meet with someone and that they don't have their child's best interests at heart, or they're out for something else. A spouse that's going to leave this person that's disabled. They're there for the money till the money comes in. And that's where there really needs to be something done to protect this person so that they don't wind up, in a situation where this recovery is gone. You're never going to get another crack at the recovery. So that's why and that's one of the points in the book is, this is the client's only time that they get to recover for their injuries. So you've got to make sure as their lawyer that everything you can do has been done to protect them and protect that recovery.
So what are some of the common mistakes that an attorney will make, like who's not well-versed in this?
I mean, I think that the most common mistake is failing to advise the client. And this is across the multitude of issues that I talk about in the book. It could be failing to advise the client about the impact on their government benefits, could be Medicaid and SSI. And if the lawyer fails to explain that and the client doesn't understand that, when they get, even a small amount of money, say it's a $10,000 net settlement to the client, they've just blown their eligibility, because SSI's cap is $2,000 if you're single. So, they think they're just getting a small amount of money when they've just become ineligible. Medicare, a lot of lawyers don't appreciate the risk with the Medicare Secondary Payer Act, and the fact that now defendants have to report every settlement to Medicare of $750 or more, and they report a multitude of information electronically that can cause the client to experience a denial of Medicare in the future. Yeah, I mean, there's with liens, it's typically making the mistake of paying the lien holder too much. I mean, a lot of lawyers, don't know how to create leverage to make an ERISA plan come to the negotiation table and reduce. Those plans have very strong rights under the U.S. Supreme Court rulings, and but there are ways to reduce those liens, and knowing those pain points and utilizing them, are things that the trial lawyer has to understand, or they're ultimately not going to get the best outcome for the client, which, in my mind is a mistake, because, trial lawyers are incredibly hardworking, and they're, they've they've gone to war to get that recovery. But unfortunately, the battle might end when the case settles, but the war has not been finished because you still have issues to contend with. And that's where I think a lot of lawyers don't appreciate the fact that war has to be, you got to finish it. And that's really where, there can be some potential exposure from a malpractice standpoint and, mistakes being made.
Right. So like can you take us through an example of where synergy settlements help the client? Like, do you have like an example that you use where you, help somebody out?
I mean, there's a lot of different ways that we do, on the healthcare lien resolution front, it really is, where we can go and get Medicare to completely waive their conditional payment. And, most trial lawyers don't know that there is a process whereby you can do that, where Medicare will actually cut a check back to the client. And we had a case, and I'll never forget it because it was just such a terrible incident. It was a party for a young girl. I don't recall how old she was, but she was young. Birthday party that her mom threw, and it was a negligent security case. Some gunmen came into where they were having this party at this apartment complex. Shot and killed the mother.
Goodness.
Grandmother was shot multiple times. She survived. She was a Medicare beneficiary, also on Medicaid, and we sought a waiver of a Medicare conditional payment amount that was, $160 some odd $1,000. She had recovered 7 figures, so it was a large recovery. But there's a way to make a financial hardship argument when somebody's on Medicaid to get Medicare to waive their conditional payment, and that's what we did. And so, she netted out $100,000+ that she would not have likely if we had not made that request. So, that's a material difference. That can mean the difference between getting therapy and treatments and paying off debt. That money, I would much rather see that money ultimately in the injury victim's pocket versus Medicare or a private insurance and ERISA plan. That to me is ultimately what I see as our successes, is when we're able to put more money into a client's pocket in one of those lien resolution situations, or, protecting the client's future eligibility. I personally still, I've got a law practice that's separate from Synergy. And
oh, really?
Part of what I do in that is I litigate with Medicaid over their reimbursement rights. And I absolutely love getting the opportunity to go and argue to an administrative law judge as to why this injury victim under federal law should not have to pay that money back to Medicaid. And, I see those situations all the time where it makes an incredible difference to that client ultimately, because, the argument is they're getting a limited recovery. And, in most instances, that's the bottom line of it. People don't win the lottery in these cases. They might get $1 million, and that might sound like a lot of money, but they might have a life care plan that says they need $50 million over the rest of their lives. So, people talk about these recoveries like the McDonald's hot coffee case, and people think it's outrageous and crazy. But what they don't understand is, for example, that lady had 3rd-degree burns. Her family wanted the medical bills paid for, and McDonald's basically said no.
Right.
And, the case got litigated, and, ultimately, she had suffered really severe burns as a result of a company serving a beverage at a temperature they knew that if it hit skin, it caused these types of injuries.
That was a popular case. That was like a while ago. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. But, there's still, and I actually posted an article on LinkedIn today, and it was talking about these lawsuit myths. It was in the Washington Post, and, people view these personal injury lawsuits as as kind of lotteries. But, you know, in the article, it said the average personal injury recovery is $68,000. I can tell you that there are thousands of cases out there, and I see these frequently. And even in my own situation where I was hit by a driver who had a $10,000 policy, thank God I had a lot of underinsured motorist coverage, which covered me. But, you know, if you don't have that coverage and you get hit by a driver carrying a minimum policy in Florida, which is $10,000, you know, my medical bills from my accident alone were $380,000.
Wow. Jeez.
You know, I mean, think about, you know, that's what the typical situation is. There's 10,000 in coverage and people have, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars in medical bills. The cases where somebody does get 5 million, 10 million, you know, those are cases where somebody is catastrophically injured and will never work again, and probably has a life care plan that is, you know, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 million. I mean, you know, we see these cases routinely where these life care plans are massive. And that's where, you know, these people might get $1 million, but they need a special needs trust because Medicaid has to pay the other 49 million. If somebody's only getting $1 million, they can't
Right.
pay for the 50 million that they need in care.
Right. Wow. That's a lot. Yeah. I mean, that's really an interesting thing for people to know who think that recovering on a personal injury is really a lottery, which it really isn't, because they have these life care plans that need to be covered. So switching gear a little bit, like I know you're an avid cyclist, like I'm just curious about that. Like where I know it's totally switching gears, but I'm kind of literally like how like where do you love to cycle, like mostly like in the world?
Yeah, I mean, I've actually ridden kind of all over. When I was younger, I spent some time riding and racing over in Europe, and
Wow.
a couple of summers ago, well, I guess 2015. So it's been a little while. I spent a few weeks cycling in France and did some of the same climbs that they do in the Tour de France, and got to see some amazing, beautiful scenery there in France. And you know, I mean, cycling is for me just it's like walking, right? It's something that you just do, and for me, there's a passion for it that I can't explain other than it's a great opportunity to keep yourself in shape, camaraderie of riding with a group of people that are like-minded. And yeah, I these days I stick pretty close to where I live and ride with a group of cyclists that I trust, because, you know, after being hit, you're much more attuned to the risks that you're taking. And, you know, I'd like to be around. So I'm very worried, you know, because you've got so many people that are driving with their cell phones up here and not paying attention to the road. So you really, you know, have to be cognizant of the risks that you take every time you get out there on the road. And I'm much more, you know, cautious than I used to be. But, you know, at the end of the day, I never wanted that accident to define me in taking the sport away. And while I don't race competitively like I was doing before I got hit, I still ride at the same level and enjoy doing it. And it's a great way to, you know, have that work-life balance too. You know, I work pretty hard, and I use that as an outlet for, you know, forgetting about what I'm doing and just focusing on, you know, being physically active, being outside. And like this morning, I was out early with a group, and, you know, watched the sun come up on a bike and saw an amazing sunrise. And there's not much better to me than being outside and seeing that kind of you know, beauty in nature just unfold.
That's awesome. That's great. So like, what do you wish you knew like 5 or 10 years ago that would have helped your career or helped your clients? Like, is there, I know hindsight's 2020, but I guess we all have to think back and to what, man, if I only knew like that thing, I could have changed it a little bit, you know?
I mean, I think it really ultimately boils down for me to having this experience that I've had through the accident, because as painful of an experience as it was, all the way around, and I'm when I got hit, it was when my son was going off to college, so I didn't get to move him into his college dorm and experience that. And I missed out on doing some things that I had planned and had a great trip planned, and things that you just can never get back. But that those are all temporary things, right? This the learning that I received and the knowledge, I think that for me, not that I would ever wish that on anybody, but experiencing that just gave me a different perspective. And as I said, I think early on, this idea that you really truly don't know what anybody's been through or what they're going through is so true, because once you experience something like that, you quickly realize that people go through some things, and recognizing that the importance of empathy and understanding for their situation, and ultimately doing the best you can for those people. I mean, I always knew the importance of what I did. I just didn't quite have the understanding until I wound up in that situation myself. And I went through every aspect that any client would. I woke up in the hospital not knowing what happened to me.
Wow.
With my family, concerned about whether I was going to live. Then I went through litigation. I had a lawyer, who handled my case, and was deposed multiple times. Went to a mediation and got the ultimate question of, hey, do you want to sell this case? Here's what their top dollar is, and having to make the decision. And it was an emotional decision, whether to take less than the policy limits that were available. And I've seen clients, struggle with that decision, and you don't really truly understand it until you're being asked that same question by the mediator. And, ultimately settling my case. And then, I negotiated my own healthcare lien, and, had to decide what I was going to do with the recovery. And, as I said, I set up a structured settlement. I also set up a trust, which is still in place because I still need some future medical procedures that I wanted to have money put away to make sure that it was there when I needed it. So, I really went through every aspect of what a client does, which I think has made me better at what I do, and also has made the company better overall, because I've really, like I said, every person that comes on board, I go through my story. I show them the pictures so they can see what it looks like. And I tell them, look, I had it easy. I was the lucky one. I didn't have a brain injury. I didn't have a spinal cord injury. I broke every bone in my face, and I had dental injuries and broke my jaw in multiple places and broke my nose. But at the end of the day, I've been able to recover, and I'm back to my life the same way as it was. Maybe a little bit different with some of the things with my jaw and my mouth, but that's not the case for most people. Most of the people that get hit like I did, they wind up, in a horrible position. They're either confined to a wheelchair, or they have a brain injury, and life will never be even remotely the same. And so, that's important for people that are part of our team to really understand that and have it hit home. And I can use what I went through as an example for them. And my hope is that ultimately it continues to drive our mission and make those people cognizant of the importance of what they do every time they talk to one of the clients that we ultimately serve, or talk to a lien holder, or talk to a government agency, whoever it might be. I always want them to understand why they're doing what they're doing.
Wow. It's amazing. I mean, like that story, it really connects to what you do today, like that accident that sound like you had. Obviously we're glad you're here talking to us today. So thank you. So Jason, let me ask you, is there anything that we've left out that you would like the Lawyer Stories community to know? And if not, how can everybody get a hold of you?
Yeah, I think we've covered a lot of important territory. I mean, I do think, for lawyers, taking the time to read that book, I think will help them in their practices and making sure that they're effectively protecting their practices and protecting their client. I mean, there's two reasons. There's you want to do right by the client. You also want to protect your law firm and your law practice from making mistakes, particularly these days where Medicare is going after lawyers through the Department of Justice, and you've got Medicare Advantage plans suing lawyers for double damages under the Medicare Secondary Payer Act, and you've got ERISA plans that are very tough to deal with. You've got a lot of potential exposure and issues, and for lawyers, reading that book, I think, will open their eyes to some of those issues and making sure that they really fully understand what they face and how to deal with those issues. In terms of reaching me, our website is synergysettlements.com. My email is jason@synergysettlements.com. Do a lot of consulting with lawyers and law firms all across the country. That's, a big part of what we do is trying to help identify issues and see if we can help the law firm and their injury victim clients. We only want to make sure that we're going to add value and create a better situation and better outcome for that injury victim. Because I could care less if we're anything other than being of assistance and successful in helping that injury victim.
Yeah, that's great. So, and I do want to highlight all over the country too. So you're consulting. So it's not just Florida, New York. It's everywhere.
Yep. We've got business in every state in the union, and hopefully continue to do that. So, and too, the book is available on Amazon. So it's Art of Settlement, and you can buy it on Amazon. And actually, the proceeds from the sale of the book are going to a local charity here. So I wasn't writing the book to make any money off of it. I want to truly, ultimately be part of the solution.
Wow, that's amazing. So the Art of Settlement, Jason Lazarus, Synergy Settlements. It's been a pleasure. And thanks for coming on today. It's great to meet you. Hopefully we'll stay in touch and I can connect you to some other people elsewhere if you ever need it. Sounds like you're doing pretty well, though. So thanks for being here.
I always want to connect with more people. It's my pleasure. Thank you. Really enjoyed having you.
You got it. Wherever you are in the world today, enjoy yourselves.
The Lawyer Stories podcast is produced by Marketing the Law. Are you looking at your social presence every day? Potential clients are. Learn how to magnetize your brand with the help of Marketing the Law. Find us on Instagram @Marketing the Law to learn more.